stories that went horribly wrong. Each story will send chills down your spine. But before we get to them, let me remind you, viewer discretion is advised. On the morning of February 9th, 2019, two Italian divers, Carlo Basso and Carlo Barbieri, prepared to explore the famous El Dudu cave system in the Dominican Republic. The cave, known for its labyrinthine passages and striking underwater scenery, attracts divers from all over the world. For many, it represents a challenge, a place where skill and courage are tested. Basso and Barbieri, though not certified for cave diving, appeared undeterred. Their recreational diving experience gave them confidence, but confidence alone is no substitute for the specialized training required to navigate underwater caves. By 11:50 a.m., the pair had entered the water. Their excitement was evident, and their gear, though suited for open water diving rather than caves, seemed in order. They moved smoothly at first, following the main guideline, a lifeline for divers in these submerged mazes. This line, secured to the cave's interior, was their connection to the surface. With no natural light and endless twists and turns, the guideline is a diver's only assurance of finding the way back. The initial phase of their dive appeared uneventful. Basso and Barbieri swam deeper into the system. However, as they ventured farther, the underwater world grew darker and more constricted. The beauty of the wide-open spaces near the entrance gave way to narrow corridors and oppressive silence. Then came the critical moment. Somewhere deep within the cave, they encountered a jump. A jump is a secondary line that branches off the main guideline, leading to side passages that can be far more treacherous. These jumps are intentionally set apart to prevent inexperienced divers from accidentally following them. Only divers with advanced training know how to handle such a junction, using a jump reel to connect the secondary line back to the main one. But something happened. Basso and Barbieri deviated from the main guideline and entered the side passage without taking the necessary precautions. Perhaps it was curiosity, an eagerness to explore, or even a simple lapse in judgment. As they pushed into the narrower space, the environment began to change. The passage was tight, and their movements disturbed the fine silt coating the cave floor and walls. Within moments, the crystal-clear water turned murky, reducing visibility to nearly zero. In these conditions, even experienced divers with proper equipment can struggle to maintain their bearings. For Basso and Barbieri, who lacked cave diving training, the situation rapidly deteriorated. The silt enveloped them, creating a blinding fog. Their flashlights, so effective moments ago, now reflected off the suspended particles, rendering them useless. The once pristine underwater world had transformed into a claustrophobic nightmare. Every movement stirred up more silt, compounding their disorientation. The main guideline, their tether to safety, was now out of reach. Without it, the chances of navigating back to the surface diminished drastically. Panic began to set in as they realized the gravity of their situation. In the confined space, communicating was almost impossible. Hand signals, the primary method for divers, were obscured by the swirling silt. Time became an enemy. The air supply in their tanks was finite, and every panicked breath consumed it faster. Their lack of training meant they were unprepared for this kind of emergency. The silence of the cave, once serene, was now oppressive, broken only by the sound of their breathing and the occasional clang of equipment against rock. Somewhere in that dark, silty corridor, the two divers continued to move, perhaps in an attempt to find the main guideline or an alternate exit. Each turn, each effort to push forward, likely felt like a gamble. Were they getting closer to safety or venturing deeper into danger? For Basso and Barbieri, the sense of isolation was overwhelming. The weight of the water above them, the encroaching darkness, and the dwindling air supply created an inescapable sense of urgency. They were far from the tranquil waters they had expected to explore, trapped instead in an environment that demanded precision and expertise they did not possess. The minutes stretched on, each one more critical than the last. Compounding the situation, Basso's front-mounted stage cylinder became entangled in the cave line. In his effort to press forward, the guideline snapped, trailing behind him. This severed their only reliable connection to the main guideline and the cave's exit. Trapped in an unfamiliar passage with no clear direction and rapidly diminishing air supplies, the divers found themselves in a life-threatening situation. The severed line rendered navigation nearly impossible, while the silt stirred by their movements turned the water into a suffocating haze. When Basso and Barbieri failed to surface by mid-afternoon, concern quickly grew among those waiting on land. Divers who venture into caves typically follow strict schedules, as even minor delays can signal serious trouble. The Dominican Republic's Speleological Society, DRSS, was notified, and two of its most experienced divers, Philip Lehman and Angel Comprez, prepared to search for the missing pair. The initial search began under challenging conditions. Lehman and Comprez entered the cave, following the main guideline and scanning for any sign of the missing divers. It wasn't long before they encountered heavily silted water, the first indication of trouble. The stirred-up silt was a telltale sign that Basso and Barbieri had ventured into an unstable area, likely a side passage. As the rescuers pressed deeper into the system, they discovered a broken guideline leading into a narrow, silty corridor. This discovery confirmed their worst fears. The divers had strayed from the main line, severing their only reliable connection to the cave's entrance. Without this guide, they would have been left to navigate the maze-like system blind, a near-impossible task for even the most experienced divers. Lehman and Comprez cautiously entered the side passage, but the conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The dense silt made visibility almost non-existent, forcing the rescuers to rely on touch and memory to progress. The narrow corridor further hampered their efforts, leaving little room to maneuver or search effectively. After hours of painstaking work, they were forced to retreat without finding any sign of the missing divers. The next day, the search resumed under equally challenging conditions. The silt cloud from the previous day's disturbance had not settled, and visibility remained near zero. The rescuers faced mounting frustration as they combed the labyrinthine passages, knowing that every passing hour diminished the chances of a successful recovery. On February 12th, 3 days after Basso and Barbieri had entered the cave, the rescuers finally located one of the missing divers. Carlo Barbieri's body was found wedged in a narrow side passage, his position so restrictive that even the experienced recovery divers struggled to reach him. His equipment showed no signs of failure, suggesting that his death was likely the result of suffocation or drowning, both common outcomes for divers trapped in tight, silty spaces. Despite their best efforts, the rescuers were unable to retrieve Barbieri's body. The narrow confines of the passage made it impossible to maneuver safely, and the risk of further disturbing the already unstable environment was too great. The team reluctantly decided to leave Barbieri where he was and continued their search for Basso. For the next several days, the recovery effort faced one obstacle after another. The dense silt cloud showed no signs of settling, and the intricate maze of the cave system made it difficult to determine where Basso might have gone. By February 21st, after nearly 2 weeks of searching, the local recovery team decided to halt their efforts. The risks had become too great, and there was little hope of finding Basso alive. With the situation growing increasingly dire, 2 American divers, Ed Sorensen and Mike Young, were called in to assist. Both men were renowned for their expertise in cave diving recoveries, particularly in low visibility and high-risk environments. However, their arrival was met with resistance from local officials, who feared that the recovery effort was too dangerous. After tense negotiations, Sorensen and Young were given permission to proceed, but with a strict deadline of 8 days to complete their mission. Their first priority was to recover Carlo Barbieri's body. Using specialized equipment, including a harness designed for tight spaces and a 4-point anchor system for stability, Sorensen and Young carefully maneuvered into the narrow passage where Barbieri had been found. The recovery took 4 hours, requiring meticulous work in zero visibility conditions. Despite the challenges, they successfully brought Barbieri's body to the surface, providing some closure to his grieving family. The next day, the Americans turned their attention to finding Carlo Basso. Pushing beyond the point where Barbieri had been discovered, Sorensen encountered a crevice at the end of the passage. There, in complete darkness, he found Basso's body, wedged tightly in the confined space. To free the body, Sorensen had to cut away Basso's entangled equipment, including his back-mounted cylinder, which floated upward, indicating it was empty. His front-mounted cylinder, still full, sank into the crevice, suggesting that Basso had struggled desperately in his final moments. After disentangling the body, Sorensen and Young followed the same recovery process used for Barbieri. 4 hours later, they brought Basso's remains to the surface, concluding one of the most challenging recovery efforts in the history of the El Dudu cave system.